Hey, good evening. Welcome to the second part in our teachers series that I'm doing this week. I hope you're having a great week, learning lots of new things. I'm trying to keep each of these talks to about half an hour because I know teachers are so busy and you're probably taking your own classes at this point, or in addition to doing all your teacher work and bringing work home with you and things like that. So I'm trying to keep these short. It's an overview, and then I provide extra resources if it's a topic you'd like to dig more deeply into. So I'm going to share my slides with you. I am a visual learner and I love doing slides. And my brain just kind of processes the information as I'm putting it together. So I don't know, how do you like to learn? How do you like to teach? Go ahead and you can put in the comments what your learning style is. It's always interesting to see what teachers' learning styles are. I was at an event and it was basically a teacher's dream that had every learning style represented with activities, kinesthetic learning, and you could smell things and touch things, and it was amazing. You could listen. There were presentations going on that you could listen to. It was very fascinating. So anyways, tonight we're talking about fostering emotional intelligence in your classroom, and I hope it'll be relevant no matter what grade you teach, what subject you teach. If you're in a typical classroom or a different, a specialized classroom, I hope this will be useful and just apply to wherever you are. So you may have found your way here by this photo that went viral. I snapped that little screenshot yesterday when it was at 43,000 shares, and today it's like at 48. So it just keeps going and going because it's so relatable. But the more I thought about that, the more I just felt like I should speak to some of the pain points that teachers experience. I actually had a teacher send me a direct message. She saw that post. She was sick at school and they couldn't get her a sub, and she had vomited 12 times and went back to the classroom and they couldn't get her a sub. So hang in there, teachers. You are amazing, and the work that you do really matters. So anyways, yes, hang in there. I feel like this is kind of a first-year teacher. She's pretty frazzled. After you get that first year under your belt, you have it a little bit more together. So just a little bit about myself. My name is Catherine Case, and my background is in education, and I've taught in various settings. My undergrad, they required us to have a diverse and a non-diverse experience teaching. And then for graduate school, I chose a pretty diverse area in Richmond, Virginia to teach. And but that was a super easy gig. I taught freshman composition and just really loved it. It came very naturally to me. And even, the students who would give me a hard time. I had one student who would tell me what his mom said about things, and this was a college freshman, and I was like, okay, have your mom call me. I just started giving him a hard time back, like, no. But then, I had adult students in my class because it was just a really interesting situation. So, but very fun, very rewarding, and just super fun and easy. Then from there, I moved to Chicago to be near my fiance, and I worked in a self-contained therapeutic classroom, and it was very intense. So this was a residential facility where the children, they lived in the residence full time, and then they took vans over to the school, and they all, were bringing their stuff from their backgrounds, all their brokenness, and they were all rubbing up against each other. And they were, you can imagine, they spent all their time with these same people. It was supposed to be a therapeutic environment, but it didn't. There were a lot of missteps. I felt from my perspective, there were a lot of missteps there and opportunities missed for growth and development. So I'm passionate about these things. I'm not in the field of education anymore, but that's something I'll always carry with me. And I work in teaching self-care and emotional health and physical wellness. So those are my passions, and it's kind of all coming together this week with this series. So a little bit more about my story. Why do I care about this topic? So recently I was spending time with my dear friend Meredith, and you would just love her. She's on Instagram as Meredith Shearer, Meridithsherer. And she mentioned how grateful she was for my peaceful presence. And I just started laughing because I was not like this as a child. I've worked at developing peacefulness. She recommended that I share that story with you. So you understand like why I care about this. So there she is, the little Tasmanian devil. Back in the 80s, I had a mullet and I drank a whole bunch of Kool-Aid and I had a whole bunch of energy and I was really easily angered. And I don't know if it was because of the haircut. It could have been because of the haircut. Could have been the fact that I drank a whole bunch of Kool-Aid with sugar and artificial colors. I don't know. If I wasn't grasping a concept right away, I mean, I didn't flip out in school or anything, but just at home, I would flip out. If I wasn't getting something right away, I would, lose it. I remember one time when I was so frustrated and angry that my mom sent me to my room and I flipped my mattress over. This little girl, she was 4. I was 4 years old and I could flip my whole mattress over. So my mom would send me outside to run laps around the outside of the house and I just burn off some of that energy. But I'm so glad that they didn't label me and they didn't medicate me when I probably could have been medicated. They just let me work it out and grow in maturity. And that's not the case for most children in this situation in 2018. So after my time in the self-contained classroom, I was working at a major university. I was copy editing diagnostic reports for their learning clinic. And after a comprehensive evaluation that took place over a period of days, many of the cases they saw were resolved with just a little simple sensory technique. For example, one teen who came in, he had been medicated from the time he was 5 years old. He came in for a comprehensive learning evaluation. They diagnosed him with sensory processing disorder and gave him a few techniques to use. For example, they saw that when he was not medicated, but holding a koosh ball in his hand, he did way better on the assessments than he would if he was medicated. So it was something that was very, life-changing for him. And I read a lot of those reports. So very interesting. And similarly, in my self-contained classroom days, if a student demonstrated aggressive behavior or negative behavior, typically their medication was just increased by the campus nurse. And I remember one of my students looking at her medication and saying, "They're doping me," in her funny way she said stuff. And she took it and then she just became a zombie. And I felt like I didn't see her again for weeks. She had gotten, before that incident, or before they upped her medication, she had gotten in a physical fight with her boyfriend. And they go through a protocol, write an incident report, and then from there, they decided to increase her medication. So she couldn't stay awake in class. We opened all the windows and then she was freezing and, just to try to keep her awake and alert. It just there was no good solution in my control at that point. So it just went on for weeks like that. And eventually they shifted it. So I have some statistics for you. Nearly 1 in 3 adolescents will meet criteria for an anxiety disorder by the age of 18. So not just the students that I was working with at a self-contained therapeutic classroom for children with behavior disorders and emotional disturbances. This is the whole population. So 31.9%. That is a very large segment. Social, political, and environmental causes are likely implicated in an increase in the number of teens each year who have had a depressive episode, up 37% between 2005 and 2014. So that's a dramatic increase. Think about where we're going when all of the statistics are going this way so drastically. Children ages 0 to 17 medicated for mental health. So over 1 million on antipsychotic drugs and about 1.5 million on anti-anxiety medication. And those are just the ones that are in this patient tracker database. So from where I'm sitting, it seems that we're going the wrong direction. It seems that, we talk about mental health in this country now, but the things that we're doing aren't exactly helping. And it just really seems to be getting worse. We're not actually getting to the root cause of what it is. But as teachers, you guys have a really huge role in positively impacting children. Like, just imagine if you can teach some emotional intelligence in your classroom where you are. They might take that home to their family. They might break generational patterns if they learn how to effectively communicate and handle their emotions. It can be very powerful. So let's talk about some factors of feelings. Usually, what we see on the surface is not the whole story. And that's probably true for you. It's probably true for a kindergartner. It's probably true for most people you know. So let's look at the biological factors for some things. A lot of people have sensory issues. Those are on the rise as well. This study that I have linked here discusses like a biological factor for sensory processing disorder, and the answer is in the white matter in the brain, the connective tissue. So not the actual gray matter, but just the, where the neurons and things are firing. So even, typically developed children have a hard time with some of the sensory overload that we have. We see a lot of flickering screens. This is way hippie of me, but even light bulbs that have like the LED, if you use your phone, so if you see like a Christmas setup this year and use your phone and record it in slow motion and then play it back, you'll see a flickering. And think of all the extra stimuli that is happening to these brains. Like, I know that I'm sensitive to it. I've always been kind of sensitive to sounds and things too, but these little ones, let's just watch that, okay? And try not to put a bunch of LED lights up everywhere in your room and things like that, because we actually did on our tree and a couple years ago without realizing. And I was doing a slow-mo video of my children. That's how we realized it. But they were acting bonkers. And we thought it was just the excitement of like upcoming Christmas, but it was actually like we took those lights off and put regular old incandescent lights, and they settled down. So those little things are worth it. It's kind of amazing. So there are a lot of other studies on that. But let's talk about hierarchy of needs as well. If your children's they come to your classroom and they're hungry or they're tired or their basic needs aren't being met, they don't feel safe, for example, they're going to work to meet them. Like, their primal brain is working to meet those needs, and it's going to close, like the amygdala is going to close, and they're not going to be able to learn before those needs are met. So think back to that Maslow's hierarchy. I think I'm going to go into that tomorrow night in that class. Another factor might be nutrition, artificial colors. There are 15 million tons of artificial colors dumped into the U.S. food supply each year. 15 million. And so we've noticed a pattern with my son, who is typically developed. He's at the top of his class. He aims to please. He's a good helper. But after a movie, he had, or during a movie, he had candy with artificial colors that he's never had before. And afterwards we were doing another thing and he totally flipped out. My husband and I are looking at each other like, who is this kid? And we're like, it's got to be the treat he had. And so then one other time there was a similar incident and the same sort of behavior. And I was just like, you know what, we're just not going to go down that road again, because he really did feel out of control and we could tell he didn't really like that either. But anyways, he was like 4 or 5 during those incidences when we noticed that. So especially I don't know, especially the red dye seems to be a culprit for most children. And there's some studies on that too. If you look up articles in the Journal of Pediatrics about children who have been diagnosed with ADHD, those have been studied about being adversely affected by food dyes. So also lack of nutrients. Our food is not as nutrient dense as it used to be. So like our grandmother would get way more nutrients from just her standard American diet than we would get from the same foods. If we're eating a salad, if we're eating an apple, it's just not as nutrient dense as they once were. Genetic modification, heavy metals in our food supply, even healthy foods like kale have heavy metals in them. Those are not great for your brain, as you can imagine. And water pollution. Our water supply has pharmaceuticals in it, not from necessarily from people dumping their prescriptions down the toilet like they used to, but just through urine. Like if you know how wastewater treatment plants work, you'll want to get a good water filter for your home. There's not much you could do in your classroom unless you want to buy a Berkey for your classroom for your students. But water pollution is also wreaking havoc on our moods and behaviors and things like that. So let's get into emotional intelligence now. I promise I'm going to have good news in a little bit. Emotional intelligence is the capacity to be aware of, to control, and express one's emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. So, do you know any adults who could use help with that? It'll be great to teach children, and then by the time they're grown up, they won't be on Facebook like fighting over politics and things like that all the time. So let's talk about the specific aspects of emotional intelligence. There's self-awareness that should begin to develop at about 12 months. Some grown-ups, again, still need help with that. Self-regulation, like just the ability to add to their own toolkit and grow, like they know how to control their hands or not touch their friends. Things like that. Children start developing that. Motivation. If your children are only motivated by the new version of Fortnite, this might be an area that you need to focus on. Empathy, like social skills, which we'll get to in a second, empathy can be developed to encourage children to consider the feelings of others. So our society is increasingly narcissistic. I mean, we're the selfie society. So how do we help children develop empathy? Asking good questions, helping them to consider another's point of view, and then social skills. And I think about how much socialization has changed since I was in school. I mean, I remember being in preschool and calling my best friend on the phone, and sometimes her dad would answer, and you would have to ask, politely, may I speak to Christina, please? And you just practice speaking with adults. Or if someone called our house, I would answer the phone and use phone manners and communicate a message or get the phone to that person. But everyone's on their own individual device now, and it's just changing so much. And children have access to social media depending on when the parents allow it. It can be very complicated. So here's another example. You might not have to do this if you're, depending on what kind of setting you're in. I learned how to successfully de-escalate situations. It was very contrary to my personality to run into the fray, but with small children, with high school age children or students, you may need to de-escalate and help them untangle their feelings. So here are some things. I always say never miss a chance to infuse a situation with some peace. So if something seems chaotic, you'll want to just infuse peace. Like you're the grown-up, you're the trained expert, you are the leader in the situation. And so it's up to you not to meet them where they are, because as soon as you meet them where they are, they go here. And if you meet them again, they go here. So to bring it all down, speak very calmly, very clearly, ask great questions. If you can, step aside, take them, isolate them from the situation, because a kid is not going to be able to untangle those emotions when there's fellow students are just staring and waiting and listening to hear what the trauma is. So if you can isolate them, that's a great technique. I've done that even volunteering at our church. We had a summer camp, and we had one of the kiddos that came into the camp just was being kind of disruptive, and she just needed some attention. And so we went out in the hall and had a completely normal conversation. I mean, it was so pleasant, but in the class, she was just trying to be disruptive. And so we just had a good talk, and it was very helpful. It's very beneficial. Another technique, I talked about this a little bit last night about pattern interrupt. So your brain follows those wavelengths like currents. And so the more that thought flows, the easier it is to flow. If a child's on medication that interferes with those signals in their brains, it'll be like a blocker, like it blocks like the neurotransmitter. And eventually the brain wires around it, because that's how the brain is. It's in survival mode. And then you would need to switch the medication. So it's going to block that way. And eventually the brain wires around it. And eventually it creates little areas of scar tissue on the brain from all of that navigating. But if we can do pattern interrupt with an external stimuli and then get an opportunity to speak with them and do some really great questions and some speaking and listening, which I'll go into in a little bit, it's going to be helpful. So the Console blend is one that I'll use on my toddler or preschool age daughter. If she's having big feelings and wanting some independence and having a meltdown. I like that one. It's a very comforting blend to use. And I've given that to people who are in deep grief. But that's basically what, it's a small feeling of grief that they're experiencing, those little ones when they want some independence. So it's just very soothing. And I'll go into some more details of that blend. Another blend that's really great is the Forgive blend. And that was studied in a clinical oncology unit for the staff who were experiencing compassion fatigue. And that was the blend that helped them the most. So it was very surprising for me to see the data on that. But we do use that from time to time because of reading that research. And we've had some positive experiences. So another technique we can talk about is called anchoring. We talked about it a little bit like that last night. Sorry about that. I had to unplug my computer. When your students are in a healthy state, you'll introduce a beneficial aroma like wild orange or something that's uplifting. Only when they're in a healthy state, because your aroma and memory are in the same place in your brain. And so they work together. They're in that primal part of your brain. And that way, when they go into a feeling of overwhelm, say they have those anxious feelings or they're just in a tailspin, whatever it is, you can bring out that positive aroma, and it will remind them of being in that safe place, that it is all going to be okay, that it's not the end of the world. You might experience that with middle school students. There's lots of different ages where we feel that. Sometimes you might feel like that. So that's a neat little trick to use and just leverage that power of aroma and memory. Another thing we're going to talk about are coping skills. So just equipping them with some practical things to do. Look at the basics. Again, are their personal needs met? Are they thirsty? Are they hungry? Are they tired? Do they feel unsafe? If those things aren't all squared away, then you're not going to get much done in class that day. Another thing would be sensory play. You could make some aromatherapy Play-Doh. There's a recipe on my doTERRA in the Classroom Pinterest board. Also, anything like stress balls or things like that, it might be good depending on what age they are. Everyone's different. Another thing would be to journal and make a list. If your children that you're working with can't write words yet, have them draw pictures or something like that. Make a plan for what they can do next time that would be a better choice. That's a really great thing. And another thing that you could do would be breathing and relaxation. So my sister is a yoga instructor, and she teaches those deep yoga breaths. And when you exhale, like with everything, breathe in through your nose and exhale, like to make a noise, just blow all the air out. You're engaging the vagus nerve in your body. And you can also use an essential oil or blend. Let's see what I have here. You never know what's going to be on my desk. Rose is a really good one that's like a high frequency. So you can just put some on your hands and then just breathe it in. You look like a little bit weird, but it's better to look weird than to actually be weird, right? Here's another technique that I learned as an adult. I learned this when I was working at my church, and it's used by a lot of counselors, called the speaker listener technique. And it's great for conflict resolution. And so if we could be equipping children with these tools, we're just going to be so much further along. So listening, teach each child to listen when the speaker has the floor. So if you have to pretend to put a bubble in your mouth or zip it or whatever you need to do, depending on the child's age, ask them to repeat back what it sounds like the person is saying. So if someone says, "It really hurt my feelings when you knocked my lunch off the table," and the listener says, "It sounds like what you're saying is that it really hurt your feelings when I knocked your lunch off the table." And they're like, "Yeah." And so that clarifies what the thing is. And then you make, that's a silly situation, but it really hurt my feelings when you didn't give me a chance to play on the teeter-totter, or whatever the thing is. And then they repeat back what they think the other person heard. And then you come to some kind of agreement on what to do. And 99% of the time it works. And sometimes you just need to keep them separate. Same goes with adults. All right, let's talk about specific ways to integrate the oils. So essential oils can affect the biological factors, the emotional factors, and even like the spiritual heart factors. So there's an amazing PDF it's a free ebook on doTERRA's website. If you search ebook emotional aromatherapy, you can just print it out. It's a really free, useful tool, and it goes through very specific things that you can do, not just in the classroom, but in your own life too. So that's going to be a really helpful tool. But it's good to remember with your students that they're a whole person. There's a lot going on with them that you don't see, depending on, especially if you only have them for one period a day. There's a lot going on there that they might be keeping to themselves or something like that. So it's good just to remember that they are a whole person, not just their, academic records that you see. And I hate that I have to say this, but I don't want you to think that the things that I'm mentioning apply to any other brand of oil, because unfortunately there's a lot of stinky oils on the market. The essential oil market is unregulated, and it's basically the Wild West, where people can say things like 100% pure or certified organic or therapeutic grade, and it only has to contain a small component of the pure oil. The rest can be a filler or a carrier. It could have contaminants in it. It could have pesticides in it. It could have hexane, which is a chemical that's used to strip the essential oil from the plant in some cases. There's a lot of different ways that it could go wrong. So it's the ABCs: adulteration, contamination, adulteration. Well, I'm going to forget what the B is. I need to remember. You can remember. I'll leave it in the comments. Now I forget. It's going to drive me crazy. Anyways, but there's a lot of different ways that people bake the oils, and you might not know what it is doing, but your body will know, your cells will know, because they interact with your body on a cellular level, even if you're just breathing them in. I would say it's almost worse to breathe in a fake oil than it would be to put a fake oil on your skin because it's immediately going through your lungs to your bloodstream. So don't cheap out. Your body's going to know the difference, and your students are going to know the difference, and a lot of different things. So why doTERRA? In addition to having that purity and potency that I talked about, it's verified by a third party, and you can check it out on sourcetou.com. So each bottle of oil has a little lot number on the bottom, and you can put that in at sourcetou.com, and they will give you a report saying exactly what's in it. 96% of doTERRA sourcing is exclusive. So if someone says our oils are just like doTERRA's, they are mistaken, because no one could really, sourcing is a big deal to doTERRA, and that's basically why they started, and they hire a lot of experts around the globe who can maintain that for them. They use something called co-impact initiatives, so where the oils are sourced. For example, in Haiti, the vetiver root that we get from Haiti is grown underground, and to get an ideal vetiver essential oil, that root has to stay in the ground for 18 months, which is a very long time if you're a farmer, because the farmers were only getting paid upon harvest. So they would let it grow for a period of time, dig up the root. They have to put a section of the root back in to regrow. But anyways, if you leave it in for 18 months, you get the ideal chemistry. If you leave it in less than that, it's less than ideal. So when doTERRA came in to work with these farmers, obviously people in Haiti need some help and support. They've had natural disasters. They've had, already starting in poverty years ago, just never really developing. So doTERRA went in and they saw what was going on, and they wanted to pay them along the way. Like, we want the vetiver root to be in the ground for 18 months because then we get the best oil. But we also want these people to get paid and not be starving. So they pay them a fair wage throughout the time, not just at the time of harvest, so that they could actually afford to live. And it's amazing. And then we get the best oils, and they get paid, and they have a good life. And then doTERRA also saw when they were in Haiti that the women and children were hauling water all day. So they established a clean water source for them. So they weren't doing that. And then they had all that free time. So doTERRA built schools for them. So they're just really changing the economies all over the world by doing things like that. So when you're purchasing an oil, you are benefiting these people. I always think of them when I use vetiver. I think of the people in Guatemala when I use cardamom. In fact, go buy some cardamom, because the people in Guatemala recently experienced an earthquake, and many people lost their homes. So when you make that purchase, it benefits them. There's so many stories. You can go to healinghands.org, healinghandsfoundation.org, I think, to look at all of the stories. You could even apply for funds there if you're a wellness advocate and you want to do your own project. So that's amazing. doTERRA is privately owned and debt-free, which is unheard of. It's a multi-billion-dollar company that is privately owned and debt-free. You never hear about that in anywhere. doTERRA is the only brand trusted by hospitals and universities, and there's actually a medical initiative starting called Prime Meridian Health, and we're getting a clinic where I live in Nashville, and there's going to be one in Phoenix and a few other places. The next one after that first round will be in Atlanta, so there's going to be spreading out across the United States, and it's going to revolutionize healthcare. And when you go there, you'll get, it's called Prime Meridian because it's like where East meets West, and you can get Western medicine protocol. You can also get a natural method, and you can get some essential oils from a wellness advocate. They won't be selling the oils there, but you can get them from a wellness advocate or through your own account. So teaching empathy through co-impact. That's a great one. If you want to go back to those, emotional intelligence, and teach your children empathy, you can look up those Healing Hands projects and the co-impact sourcing. And there are more than the dots that I have on the map, but you can see there pretty evenly distributed around the globe. It's amazing. So incorporating these useful tools, I always think, I wish that I would have had these when I was teaching, especially in that classroom where emotions were running high. I wish that I would have had these. So my regrets and what ifs, I hope that I can educate you so that it can make an impact where you are. They've played a really crucial role in my mental and emotional health over the years. I've used essential oils for about 8 years, and I just don't know where I would be without them. So there's 3 ways that you can use them: aromatically, topically, and internally. So in your classroom, you're really only going to be using them aromatically. This is a really simple, effective way to positively affect the moods and emotions in your learning environment. So the olfactory system is in your nose, like it starts in your nose and then goes back into the brain and immediately engages that primal brain. You begin to feel safe. The amygdala opens, and then children will be receptive to learning. You can integrate oils into all these different practices. So again, in the factors of feelings, you want to open the amygdala with aroma, create a positive atmosphere. Like nobody likes to go into a stinky classroom or one that smells like disinfectant. You need a good smell. And unfortunately, candles are toxic and not allowed in school rooms anyway. And then air fresheners are not good for your body. You want to reduce the toxicity every chance you get for your students. And then if you have children with sensory issues, you want to allow them to choose the oils. You could even use that as an incentive. So, you might not diffuse something if they don't like it and it's not giving them a good feeling. Well, we all have our preferences with aroma, and thankfully there are lots of different oils to choose from. So you can integrate oils into your de-escalation process with the pattern interrupt and the anchoring. Those are great, great tools to have during those things, because without that, we're just working on our own, our own bandwidth. If we have this other tool to come in and just immediately affect the brain, so much easier. So you can use them in your coping skills as far as deep breathing, listening, and understanding people. You can use the focus blend called Intune, or the one for, let's see if I have the children's oils. This one, there's one called Thinker. Thinker is one of the new children's blends. It's amazing, and it's going to help them focus. It's pre-diluted, so it would be safe, but you'd probably have to get permission if you're going to apply something topically to a kiddo. They're safely diluted. But so here are some specific oils. The Cheer blend is just like sunshiny and optimistic. It's citrusy, and it's just a little boost of happiness. Motivate is minty and citrusy, and it replaces feelings of guilt and pessimism. Who doesn't need that? It gives confidence and courage. Passion is inspiring and creative. It sparks excitement and joy. It's spicy and kind of sweet. So it's got like a little bit of vanilla in it, and it's cinnamony. It's really really smells amazing. The Peace blend, I've had some powerful experiences with the Peace blend for taking me right out of those anxious feelings. So it's called the Reassuring blend. It encourages contentment and composure. Who doesn't need that? It dispels anxious feelings. It's woodsy and floral. So the vetiver oil that I was talking about from Haiti is in that blend, along with some other florals, and it makes just a really good blend. Console is the one that I talked about during temper tantrums, or if you have a student who's grieving, or it's just comforting. It feels hopeful and healing, and it's sweet and has some floral oils and tree oils. And then the Forgive blend that I talked about was the favorite that came out on top in the clinical oncology study. It counteracts anger and guilt, which you could imagine, if those working in the clinical oncology unit experience loss. So it promotes relief and patience. I don't know if you need patience at all when you're teaching, but It's also fresh and woodsy. I've also heard about Forgive. This is not in the clinical diagnostic, but I have heard about it repelling negative people. So if you have like a complaining teacher who comes to your classroom a lot, I've heard about people diffusing that to kind of like keep them away. So choose what's the right way for you. You can purchase oils retail, you can purchase them wholesale or below wholesale. So when I say below wholesale, I'm referring to doTERRA's subscription box, which is called Loyalty Rewards. Customers who customize a subscription box each month, if you're spending more than $50, you increase a percentage from 10% up to 30%. If you spend $1, if you have a hard month where you just purchased all your students' back to school supplies, like a lot of teachers I know, so you just spend $1, you buy a lip balm or something small, you can maintain your percentage back, which is really great. So you don't go all the way back to 10%, but you can customize it and get whatever you want. So I use oils frequently, but I also use hair care, skin care, body care, supplements, children's supplements, toothpaste, deodorant, laundry soap, cleaner concentrate. Everything that I buy basically comes from doTERRA. So I customize that each month and earn up to 30% back, plus shipping reimbursed back into your points account. You can also receive the free product of the month and other specials that doTERRA has going on. So you can always check on their website what the current specials are, or on my website, which is catherinecase.com. So to choosing a kit. So if doTERRA put popular kits together for people just getting started with essential oils, which is really helpful. And this month, several of those kits are 20% off. So you can go to this page on my website. If you go to catherinecase.com, essential oils daily, and then drop down to choose the right kit. I think that's what it's called. Choosing the right kit is how it's in. And you will see several kits. So the oils that I went over in the emotional aromatherapy line are the whole kit is 20% off this month, which is crazy because the Passion Blend alone is like $60. You can get the diffuser is like $90 by itself. And if you were going to buy all of those, I think it would be close to like $300. But this month let me double check the price. I think it's $159 when it's on sale, which is a really good price. So I hope that you're watching this during September 2018. If you're watching the replay, you can go to my website and see what the promotions are for the current month. You'll also see when you visit my website that I have this amazing team. I have my sister, who is a yoga instructor, as I mentioned, one of my best friends who has a medical background. I have nurses and dietitians, and I have teachers, and so many wonderful resources to help support you on your way. So when you join our team, you can also, if you're buying a kit and you want to shop through one of their links, feel free to shop through one of their links too. That would be amazing and bless them. So I hope that has been helpful for you. I went way over. Well, I'm trying to keep these to 30 minutes, and I'm at about 41 minutes, 42. So you can find me at Catherine Case and Essential Oils Daily on Instagram. I do separate accounts. And then I have a platform on Facebook called Nurture, Grow, Lead. And you'll see that blog on my website, and also my Essential Oils Daily page where I post current promotions and educational info and all that stuff. So let's stay connected. Let me know what your questions are, and tune in to the next one. If you're watching this recording, you can search for it in YouTube. So Friday, we're having the Amplified Learning Outcomes class, which is amazing because, who wouldn't want amplified learning outcomes? Because you as a teacher are assessed on your students' outcomes sometimes, and let's make them better. And then Saturday, we're going to focus on happy, healthy teacher, because I know teachers put themselves last, and your body's probably, tired, and you need to build your immune system. And I've read, or my friend who works for the State Department of Education in a state I won't mention, but I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that, so I'll just skip it. But she was talking about some research about the number one ailment of first-year teachers, which is urinary tract infections, because they don't have time to go to the bathroom. So anyways, we'll get into those topics on Saturday. So if you're watching the recording, you could go ahead and search on YouTube for those class topics: Happy, Healthy Teacher and Amplified Learning Outcomes. So anyways, have a great night. I'll talk to you soon.